Hello, everyone. Today I'm with Vinicius Nobre, or Vini,
Hello.
for friends. Thank you so much, Vini, for this interview.
Thank you.
The academic manager of Cultura Inglesa São Paulo in Brazil. He's also, among other things, he's also a book author. His latest book is called Getting into Teacher Education Handbook. Is that correct, Vini?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a Celta tutor, Delta tutor as well. Are you? Yeah.
Yes, I felt Delta,
Delta,
Celta.
I
We
felt
do pretty much everything.
everything. And he's one of the biggest names in ELT in Brazil. So
Oh.
thank you so much, Vinny.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Vinicius, can you tell us a little bit about your story in teaching education? How did you get into teaching?
I always like to say that it was very much by accident.
Mm-hmm.
It was I was a hyperactive teenager, and I had just gotten my CPE certificate, and my parents just wanted me to do something, and they said, "Why don't you go and use this English that you've learned?" And then I started teaching, and I fell in love with it. I tried to do a number of other things. I went to different university courses. I studied some years of administration, business admin,
Mm-hmm.
and social sciences and drama. But I never stopped teaching. And then one day I just realized that this is what I love and this is what I have to do. And then I went back to university to study languages,
Uh-huh.
and this is pretty much how I got
I
into it.
started. Uh-huh. How old were you when you first started teaching?
I was 15.
15, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
almost a crime to hire somebody this young.
It
But
was. Uh-huh. And who inspires you as a teacher, as a teacher trainer, and who inspired you in the past? Are there any big names in the LT, or there are other teachers?
interesting. Uh, I think I might have asked this question a number of times, but I don't think I've ever been asked this question.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think that different people inspired me on different occasions
Mm-hmm.
and different phases of my career. I definitely had an English teacher who loved so much what she did that I didn't even notice how much she inspired me, but she was so happy in the classroom, and she had such a great time, and she was such an amazing teacher that very unaware was I of how much she was influencing me, but she did play a major role in my choice. But then after I started teaching, I met a number of different people and
Mm-hmm.
such amazing professionals, so committed. I've been very lucky. I always like to say this because I had a great bosses and supervisors and coordinators who really took their time to teach me a lot. And who I think people who inspire you the most are the ones who are very close to you, who you can
Mm-hmm.
actually see every day, and you can see how human they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that having big icons who are, far from you is interesting, but I find that the most inspirational people are the ones who might be right there next to you, and then
Close to
you can
you.
see how they cope with
Mm-hmm.
everyday life. And so I think that I've been very lucky to run into a number of people who might not be big names or who might not be pop stars, but who inspired me tremendously.
That's fun. That's great. Absolutely. And the last talk I watched that you delivered was the one last month, right, in Rio,
Yeah,
fostering critical thinking skills, and it was amazing. Brastiçal
thank
Sig in
you.
Rio. So yeah, and you talk about how teachers can foster critical thinking among students and also among themselves, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, can you tell us more about that? How can teachers foster? How can teachers promote critical thinking in the classroom when there are 30 or more students in class with from different levels, from different backgrounds? it's not an easy job, right?
No, no, absolutely not. It's a huge challenge. And when you look at the features and what qualifies critical thinking, then it becomes an even heavier burden, because it is very, to say that you are fostering critical thinking. Indeed, that's quite complex. It's not something that you can easily manage or implement. It's not a set of activities, and this is my campaign. This is what I've been trying to convey. That we often go to workshops or courses where a lot is discussed about how to design a task that will foster critical thinking, when in fact the way I see it, it has a lot to do with your attitude, and then it doesn't really matter how many students you have in the classroom. You can have maybe one or two students or 40, 45 students. If you don't reflect upon the way that you look at the world and the way that you think about the information that you receive, if you're not making an effort to think critically yourself, it will be very, very hard for you to pass it on to others. But essentially, I think that for you to be able to develop critical thinking in your students and in other people, first of all, you need to be constantly challenging yourself and asking yourself whether you can think critically and whether you're satisfied with the depth of critical thinking that you propose to your own life. And then after that, and then and only then can you start looking at others and helping them become better able to think critically and challenge the status quo. But I really think it's a matter of developing the right attitude.
I remember you said that, yeah. And asking questions plays a major role in developing critical thinking, right? So how important do you think is the art of asking questions, clarifying questions, right? We talk about
Absolutely.
clarifying questions in the classroom.
I I think it's so important, and what a lot of experts in the literature will say is that for you to be able to foster critical thinking, you need to know which questions to ask, when to ask them, how to pose them, and I don't think we spend that much time discussing the questions that we ask. I think that we develop a lot of very scripted questions in formal training
Indeed,
courses,
yeah.
like questions to check instructions, questions to check concepts. If anyone did the CELTA, you have heard
Concept
of the famous
questions.
CCQs, the
Yeah.
CCQs, the ICQs, all the Qs. But these are very scripted questions, and they don't necessarily reflect your attitude. They can be quite mechanical. They have their own importance. I mean, I think they have to be asked. I'm not saying that we should be looking at different questions at the expense of these
Yeah.
more scripted kind of questions. But I think that a lot of attention has to be paid as well to how we devise questions that will provoke genuine thinking, and questions that can generate real scaffolding and that can be more thought-provoking, that can really shake things around and get people to sweat. I think that we teach in a very comfortable way, comfortable for us as teachers, comfortable for students. And Paulo Freire, he used to say that thinking is an exercise and learning involves thinking. Therefore, if students leave the classroom feeling relaxed and they're not tired, that means that no thinking has taken place. Therefore, no learning has taken place. So I totally agree with that. I think that there's got to be that uneasiness. The students have to sweat, because you're processing, you're thinking, and a lot of energy is spent when you are really thinking about something. And I'm afraid that in a lot of what we do, we are satisfied with a very superficial level of thinking, and then we move on. So the actual critical thinking is postponed until God knows when.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also leads us to talk about lesson plans. For example, the standard lesson plans format, right? Be them by CELTA or Delta. So how can we? What's the usefulness of those standard lesson plans, and how could teachers change this model for, for promoting critical thinking, for example?
I think that, well, at least in Celtas and Deltas, the lesson plan, well, I think that in life, when you're teaching, planning a lesson thoroughly is extremely important. I think that in Celta and Delta, what we have is a template,
Right.
but it's really a blank canvas, and teachers can play with that in whatever way they want to. I think that what we try to do in Celtas and iCelt and Deltas is to prioritize and offer some guidance regarding the key features that one needs to consider when planning a lesson. But it's really a template. It's a blank piece of paper with some headings, some tables that you have to fill in with what you have planned. So there is a very high level of customization, and the teacher needs to add his or her voice to that. I truly believe that, again, we overlook the importance of planning, and we usually spend a lot of energy thinking about activities that we're going to do. So if you go to a conference, the most popular workshops are usually 10 fun activities for young learners.
Yeah.
But I don't think we spend as much time discussing the rationale behind these activities, or how we can devise the activities that ourselves and create something new with a big purpose. What motivates you to choose this over that? And then my big issue, my critique really, is for lesson plans that are provided to teachers as recipes, and then, having to follow something by the book.
Yeah.
Then I have serious reservations, because I think that we teach individuals, and students are extremely different. And if we are in a world in which we are discussing differentiation, differentiated learning, individualization, diversity, we, ironically, in education, we've been witnessing a trend where methods have been spreading extremely fast. Methods where the teacher is not encouraged to think or criticize or adapt. So I think that Celtas and iCelts and Deltas, they aim at preparing teachers to be a little bit more critical and a little bit more autonomous in this process. So the lesson plan that is provided is really just a template with the key points that one needs to consider when planning a lesson. But the teacher's voice will always, in my opinion, be the most important element of the lesson plan.